if you ask what did the British fear the most, it's certainly, they thought the Stern Gang were fanatics and they were very scared of them, but they knew their numbers. I mean, they engaged mostly in political assassination. Irgun never numbered more than 5,000 persons, and that's including support. What they always worried about is exactly as you described, is the Haganah Palmach, which numbered 40 to 60,000 members at least. Then they realized that if both of those paramilitary forces decided to actively participate in the revolt, that holding on to Palestine would be untenable. And of course, as you know, there was a brief period after World War II when the Haganah Palmach allied with the Irgun and with the Lehi. And engaged in attacks against British targets. As you pointed out, the radar stations along the coast that intercepted ships bringing illegal immigrants. Of course, in June 1946, there was a famous Night of the Bridges. I have a photograph in the book, actually, where they blew up all the bridges linking Palestine with Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. I think the key in where the important nuance shift in the book is that following the King David Hotel, and that's another controversy that I couldn't get into because, of course, the Haganah had a role in selecting it as a target, and there's a more complicated story. But after, I think, the carnage at the King David and the opprobrium that arose, this alliance fell apart completely. And generally speaking, after 1946, the Haganah Palmach concentrated almost exclusively, as you describe, on information operations and also on illegal immigration. They no longer attacked the British. But that, I think, is where the importance of the Irgun surfaces in constantly keeping, as a much smaller force, of course, constantly keeping that pressure on the British and making rule untenable in the sense that there was this large garrison that was always guarding against a revolt by the Haganah, but was even having trouble defeating 5,000, let alone 60,000 men at arms. And that's, again, I'm not trying to, and I'm not trying to finesse this either, I'm not trying to in the book say privilege one or say one was more important than the other. But again, as someone who spent his entire career studying the effects of terrorism and political violence on government decision-making and trying to better understand the countermeasures that can be used to defeat terrorism, that was really my interest, and why I thought the Irgun story is, at least in the English literature, is pretty much neglected. In the Hebrew literature, it's of course very contentious and controversial because, as you described, one of Jabotinsky and the new Zionist organization, or the revisionist party's opposition to the labor Zionists was precisely this issue of socialism versus capitalism. So, there it's still, I think still woven into the fabric of the Israeli polity today. But in English language, I think a lot of these debates, and especially the nuances, are less well known.